Hi, I'm Elizabeth Van Tassel from elizabethvantassel.com. I've had such a pleasure getting to know Shannon Messenger tonight at a wonderful book signing and just hearing about what she's doing with young adult and with middle grade, and we have a moment. So I'm so excited to have this moment with you.
Thank you for having me. It'll be fun.
Okay, Sophie, the inspiration for such an amazing character. She swept me away, not only with her heart of gold, but kind of edginess. How did you create that character?
I feel like in some ways she sort of created herself just as I dug into her backstory and just really thought about her ability and what it would be like to grow up hearing thoughts, especially as a child, hearing adult thoughts and hearing every time your parent is annoyed with you and trying to be nice and not say something mean, but thinking it because we're not perfect in our heads. And so the maturity that would come from that and sort of the determination that it takes to hide an ability like that, all of that really shaped her into this character who was much more resilient than I ever was when I was her age.
I was going to ask you, have you ever in your life, or maybe when you were younger, have you had to kind of draw from within to be resilient?
I went through the mother of all awkward phases and was bullied a lot in school, and but I've honestly had a pretty fortunate life. I have not had any bad health, and I had a loving family, and so I have not had to have a lot of tragedy. And so I have a lot of friends who have, and so I spend a lot of time talking to them when I'm dealing with the things that I've put Sophie through. But I think that was also why it was so important to me to give her a family. So often in these kind of books, the parents are just sort of dead, or the kid's at a boarding school, and I really wanted a character who had a strong family, even if it wasn't necessarily her biological family.
Yeah.
And even once she gets to her new world, I wanted her to have a family unit. So instead of just having it be a boarding school.
I love that, and I love how you take magical things and yet make them seem so real.
Oh, thank you.
Even the alicorn?
Yes,
saying that right?
Yes, you are. At least I know it from the internet. So.
How do you approach making that, pretending do you pretend it's like right in front of you, or,
My imagination is very vivid, so that, and a lot of times as the scene goes on, it sort of takes on a life of its own. I didn't plan on having Sylvanie talk as much as she does to Sophie, but it just worked, that they could communicate, and so it was a lot of fun, and I spent a lot of time thinking about what would a horse, a sparkly flying unicorn, what would it say, and what would it do, and would it be demanding, and, so it was a lot of fun. And I just feel like when I was growing up, it was sort of anything magical was sort of like, once you reached a certain age, you're supposed to sort of let that go. Like, you were supposed to reach that point where you didn't believe in those things anymore and stop watching Disney movies and sort of let it go. And it made me very sad because that was what I loved. And so I kind of felt like maybe if I made the magic less magic and more slightly scientific, it's more Shannon science, that maybe it wouldn't feel to kid readers like they have to give it up. Because that was one of the saddest things when I had to stop reading my favorite book series because it was too silly. Because all my friends sort of thought, you're still reading that? So, I have no idea if that's working or not, but that was sort of my goal, was to sort of take things that felt very, very fanciful and magical and sort of try to ground them into, if this was something that we would believe existed on this planet.
Now, what did those friends say when you said, now you're writing that?
A lot of those friends I've lost touch with over the years.
We'll just forget that.
Yeah, so I don't know what they would say, but they'd probably be like, yep, that makes sense.
And then gems. You do so many amazing things with gems. I'm a gemologist. I have an affinity for that, and I'm just curious where that grew from.
Well, everything in the books sort of starts at what do I love? Because I want to write about things that I love. Unless I'm writing about the villains, then it tends to be, what don't I love? But it did also, I believe that what makes a world something that people will believe and think that it exists is if there's a logic to it. So when I was first coming up with the book, I had this list of things that I needed to figure out, and it was daunting. Like, how do I decide what their clothes are and everything? And the first decision I made was their transportation, because I knew I didn't want cars or anything technological, and so I came up with the idea of light leaping and traveling on a beam of light. And once I settled on that, then it felt like, well, then light would play a really important part in their world. And so maybe it would affect the buildings, and maybe it would affect the things they wear, and maybe it would affect their gadgets. And so things like crystals and gems really respond to the light. I mean, a diamond can look completely different depending on the way they cut the facets in it, the way the light hits it.
And they cost different,
exactly,
in our world.
Yeah, so it was sort of like that made sense to me, and I wanted the elves to seem incredibly wealthy, and so what could be more, fanciful and also expensive than a city built entirely of gems and houses.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it just sort of felt like, and honestly, where would I want to live? A city made of diamonds sounds awesome to me, so.
With the Emerald City, yeah, let's go.
Exactly.
Now, tell me, how did you transfer some of those loves, or did you completely start over when you approached writing for YA?
I started my YA kind of wanting a break, because the thing about writing a series is it can feel a little repetitive. It can feel sort of like you're writing your own fan fiction. So, plus they also say never write book 2 until you sell book 1. So book 1 was trying to be sold. I had been writing it for like 3 years, and I just wanted to do something very different. And so I played around with a lot of ideas, and I settled on the Skyfall series because it felt different. Not just the age category, but it's also set in our world. So they go to normal places. They go to In-N-Out, and they drive cars, and they go on the highway, Highway 10, and it's actually set in the Coachella Valley, which is where I grew up until I was 7. So I got to sort of write in little things that only I know because of growing up there. And so it was very fun, because in Keeper, every time they eat a food, every piece of clothing they put on, I have to make up. And it was so refreshing in the Skyfall series to be like, no, they can go to In-N-Out, or they can go do something that I would love to go do. And it just sort of let me use a different side of my brain, which was nice.
It's so exciting. It's so exciting. And what lesson would you like somebody that is reading your books to walk away with?
It's hard, because as an author, especially when you write for kids, you don't want to think of the moral, because you don't want it to come across as like, I am trying to teach you this. But I feel like both of my series really explore the idea of belonging, and also maybe not fitting perfectly anywhere. Especially Sophie. She sort of grew up around humans with this ability that she was hiding, knowing she didn't fit in. Then she finds out she belongs in the Lost Cities, and she goes there, and she's sort of thinking like, okay, I'm finally going to find exactly where I belong. And then she's very different from everybody there too. And her journey through the story is sort of realizing that's okay. It's okay to just be me.
I love that.
And I feel like that is something that even in Let the Sky Fall, Vane is very like, I don't want to be a sylph. I want to just be this. And it's sort of him having to figure out how to be himself in this world this life that's sort of been thrust upon him.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for talking today, for going and buying. And
thank you. It was really fun.
I hope the sky doesn't fall.
Let's hope not.
But it's been fun imagining with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.